Hello and welcome to episode 340 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans' weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and we're here to talk about, speaking personally, probably the game that was one of my most glaring omissions from my RPG resume. And I don't think I've even talked about this in previous episodes, but I am playing Final Fantasy XIII for the first time for today's podcast. It is the only Final Fantasy game with a number lower than 15 that I haven't played. But I'm finally crossing it off the list. And who am I discussing it with for this month? Starting with Peter Triezenberg.
Hi, Peter Triezenberg, and today it is our focus to guide Michael through Final Fantasy XIII.
I'm going to pretend you didn't say that because I want to keep the tone of this show positive. Also, Audra Bowling.
Hello.
Peter and Audra, I just mentioned I'm playing Final Fantasy XIII for the first time, and I'll go first in, doing our usual thing of talking about our backgrounds with the video games that we play for our game journals on Retro Encounter. I did have a PS3 when Final Fantasy XIII came out, but I didn't get into it because there was a lot of negative buzz when it happened. Final Fantasy XIII had a bit of a troubled development history. It came in late and over budget. I think it was a part of a big planned multi-game project called Fabula Nova Crystallis, and the various games of that project. I don't think any of them, or at least some of them, didn't go their intended directions.
Pretty much none of them.
Right. But so it was from the very beginning first announcement, it was ambitious, and I think it was. I think it made money. Like it was popular. It sold some copies, but the response was really mixed. And the online crowd I rolled with at that time, this was, I guess, 2009, 2010, 2011, were a bunch of crusty old Final Fantasy VI people. Yeah, this was when I was staff on a website named after Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, right. Caves of Nurse, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
So like I heard a lot of negative buzz from old school fans. This is a game that had no world map. It was did not resemble older Final Fantasies. It had a really negative reception among my crowd, and even some personal friends that weren't in Caves of Narsh didn't love it either. So I decided not to blow $60 and just ignore Final Fantasy XIII for, doing the math, 12 or 13 years. And so I did pick up a copy of it on sale some years ago. I don't even know when, but now was the exact right opportunity to play it. And now I am, I think, halfway through. I'm at the very beginning of chapter 10. But Peter, I know because you have been, at least on RPG Fan, one of the proponents of Final Fantasy XIII, and have been maybe not banging the drum, but casually mentioning that FF XIII would be a great podcast idea for at least a couple of years now. So first of all, is that am I being fair in saying that? And tell us a little bit about you and FF XIII.
Yeah, I think you're pretty fair in saying that. I haven't played this game since it came out. I played it when it first came out in 2010. It was actually the first game I played on the PlayStation 3. I got it with my system. So I do kind of have a lot of fond associations of this game with being like one of the first like high definition games that I ever played. And to the game's credit, it looked gorgeous then and it still looks gorgeous now. I do think it is a very flawed game. I don't hate it as much as a lot of the Final Fantasy community did at the time. And I really do think that time has been kinder to this game than it has some other Final Fantasies and other early PS3 games from this era. So yeah, I'm excited I've been enjoying revisiting it and seeing how well it lives up to my memories from my first experience.
Now, Audra, your turn. Before we recorded, you told us that you have played FF XIII before, but never finished it. Is that right?
Right. I just got to a certain point, and then I think I got distracted by other things and just never went back to it. So I've been using this as an excuse to actually finish it and actually play it through from the beginning again, and I'm really enjoying it. It has some issues, but I have a lot of friends who actually really enjoyed it as well, so I feel like I needed to give it a second chance.
Yeah, and we will definitely get into those issues. And I'm giving this game a first chance because I only really knew it by reputation. But when we, the RPG fan staff, were picking the game for this month, it sort of won our internal vote. And when I announced it on social media a couple of months ago, well, actually, quite a while ago, because it was originally going to be a game that we played when I was taking a break from the podcast. The reception was really positive. Like a lot of people that were responding to my tweet about it were really excited. So it had a more warm than normal reception to it, to its retro encounter announcement. So I think that Final Fantasy XIII, I thought it had a negative reputation because of the bubble I was in. While there's a, I don't want to say a secret group or anything. Not like it's they're keeping a secret, but a lot of people do like this game,
Mm-hmm.
and for a while it was a lot of what Square Enix was doing because again, FF 15 and Type 0 are all sort of connected to that Fabula Nova Crystallis project, and they made 3 of these games plus some spin-off materials. So this is
Mm-hmm.
a unusually big chapter in like the legacy of Final Fantasy, but I don't think it's revered as much as the ones that I think of as the fan favorites. Like I think that FF13 probably is less popular than all of the PlayStation 1 FF games, for example.
I would say that's a
Yeah.
fair assessment. I definitely think that popular consensus for Final Fantasy 13 was very negative, especially when it first came out. I mean, I was there for a lot of that discourse at the time. Like, Japanese games were having a really hard time adjusting to that generation of consoles, the cost of HD game development and all that. And so this was kind of a narrative that was going around a lot of the place. You have people like, Phil Fish or whatever going around saying like, "Oh, Japanese games are dead." Um, and people were moving on to more Western made stuff. So then here comes Final Fantasy 13, a game which is kind of exemplifies a lot of people's common criticisms of Japanese RPGs at the time. It's super linear. You have a cast of extremely colorful, oddly dressed folks with a story that has a lot of proper nouns and terminology you have to learn to really make sense of it.
Oh yeah, geez. But playing a Tales of game last month and FF13 this month, I am getting my fill of made up words for magic and spiritual beings. Let me tell you.
Yeah, no kidding. But I definitely think that time, like I said earlier, time I think has been a little kinder to this game because I think it does have a fairly dedicated group of people who really enjoy it. And I think it has been due for a second appraisal.
Yes, I agree.
Even though I did not know what kind of expectations to have going in because again the reception was so mixed, and I almost always go into playing an RPG optimistically. Like I'm playing a game and I'm going to spend a lot of time with a game, I want to like it. That's almost always true, and which is why I think when I do write reviews for the website, my review scores are skew a little bit high. But I think it's hard not to notice the flaws, or at least the or at least the odd choices in Final Fantasy 13. But let's just jump into the beginning. This game begins in media res. It is an action movie opening. It makes you think of Final Fantasy VII a little bit because it's about an explosion and a breakout on a train, but except the train's not transporting military or anything. You're on a world called Cocoon, and they're undergoing something called the Purge, where because a certain area or group of people were tainted by an outside influence, the local military called I think it's called the SciComm are
Psychon.
yeah
Yeah.
SciComm are basically exiling a huge number of the population to get so that the taint doesn't spread throughout the planet of Cocoon. And we should say the taint comes from something called a pulse lassie. Again, there's a lot of
Falsey.
Oh, Falsey.
well, yes, falsy, but pretty soon they're hunting down Lissy because
Yes.
all right, but back up
We'll,
for a
have,
Yeah.
second.
we'll
Back,
explain. We'll
yeah, yeah.
explain that momentarily.
Yes. There's gonna be a lot of weird explaining in this episode, and listeners, if you're listening to this episode cold without knowing anything about FF13, this will be annoying and educational. And if you have, then well,
Then you know our pain.
Yeah, then you've lived this. But so there's two planets or worlds, Cocoon and Pulse. Pulse, it feels like Pulse is a more natural world, and Cocoon is a somewhat manufactured, entirely like metropolitan
Yeah,
world.
it's a giant floating Dyson sphere in the sky,
Yeah.
and the people inside the cocoon sphere live in fear of influence from the outside world. Like ages ago, there was a war, they got attacked. There's a lot of propaganda being pushed that's like, oh yeah, everything from the outside world is dangerous. So when the time comes and they find out that an elements from the outside world has been in Cocoon and people have came into contact with it, the Cocoon government is like, all right, we're gonna load you up. We're gonna load up every single person who's come into contact with this thing and ship them off to the world for everyone else's safety. And it's very quickly revealed that this is not, in fact, they are not, in fact, escorting people off of Cocoon. They're just killing them.
Yeah, they're just going to either kill them or literally dump them off the edge of the world. But there is a feeling by all the people on that train that they're doomed essentially. And but just as you said, like Cocoon is like a satellite of Pulse, and there are beings called Falsi, which are sort of like crystals slash gods, sort of.
Big old mechanical gods.
Yeah, and with a lot of sort of crystalline, visual influence in how they're designed. The Cocoon Falsi are basically worshipped on Cocoon. The populace is aware that the only reason Cocoon can function is because there are several Falsi supporting it. They even mentioned specifically that Eden is the name of the Falsi that sort of manages the entire the world of Cocoon. There's a Falsi called Carbuncle that provides food and nourishment to a large part of Cocoon, maybe not all of it.
There's the sun is Phoenix, quote unquote. Like there's a lot of references to older Final Fantasies with these creatures.
Yes, and Lissi, which we mentioned earlier, are humans that have been chosen by Falsi to perform a task for them. And so when a human becomes a Falsi, they're branded with
Lissi.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When a human becomes a Lissi, they're branded with a symbol on their body, and they're given a quest called a focus that is sort of the task that they must perform. And if they complete the focus to the satisfaction of the Falsi, then they are turned to crystal, and to be chosen by a Cocoon Falsi and turned into crystal is mythologized somewhat and maybe considered an honor by the people of Cocoon, but to be done so by a Pulse Falsi is basically to be cursed and ostracized and turned into a demon. And if you don't complete your focus in a somewhat timely manner, then you're turned into a zombie like monster called a Seath. So like Falsi are extremely powerful beings that are the managers and somewhat gods of the people of Cocoon and Pulse, but because of the hundreds of years following the Cocoon Pulse wars, the people of Cocoon hate and fear anything from Pulse. So when a Pulse Falsi arriving in something that's sort of like a spaceship, basically, like when basically,
you're not wrong.
Yeah, when basically a Pulse Falsi spaceship lands in part of Cocoon, it's treated as a disaster. And the game opens with a train of people that have been contaminated, quote unquote, by the Pulse Falsi, about to be dumped off world, probably just executed. So on one end of the action, we have Lightning, who is a young woman that's part of the Cocoon military, but not PSICOM, a different Cocoon military called the Guardian Corps. Right.
She's basically a cop.
Yeah.
Let's say an adult. Was Saz in his 30s? Would you say?
Yeah, I thought it was 40s, maybe.
How old is Saz Catsroy?
Because he's definitely the ad man. He's definitely the old man of the group. But JRPG old man could mean 27.
He is 40.
He's 40. Okay, all right.
I was right. Yeah.
All right, that's good. My guess would have been 36, but I think that's probably just because I'm 36 and I identify with Saz a lot.
He is magnificent, but we'll get into him.
Saz is the lethal weapon Danny Glover of this movie. Of this game. Because he is too old for this stuff, except Danny Glover didn't say stuff. But I guess that would make Lightning the Lightning the why can't I think of his name?
Mel Gibson.
The Mel Gibson of
Oh
this game,
no!
which is definitely not fair to Lightning. But
No, Lightning's gonna start
yeah,
screaming at Snow about a bunch of expletives.
yeah. So Saz and Mel Gibson are on this train, and Lightning is basically stages a dramatic attack to busting out of the train, and Saz, realizing that Lightning is a very capable fighter, sort of tags along. I don't think they really knew each other before, before they boarded the train. And so we know that on one train, Lightning and Saz are getting into some business. But meanwhile, on a different part of Cocoon, there are a group of people that have been marked for quarantine slash departure slash execution, but they're fighting the Psycom soldiers and on what basically looks like a war zone, and they're led by a man named Snow, who is at least 6'5" and has a giant knit cap that stays perfectly on his head at all times. And with several of his buds in a group in a little freedom fighting unit that he calls Nora, and there's two teenagers that are in the group that are being protected by Snow, and their names are Hope and Vanille. Vanille sort of immediately meets Hope and is trying to reassure him, because Hope is pretty stressed out by this whole thing. Although I don't think they knew each other prior to this purge going on.
Nope, she
And
just sort of latches onto him like uh, a moray eel.
yeah, she's a remora, like a remora sticking to the bottom of a shark.
Mm-hmm.
But
Vanilla is also the game's narrator, so she does
Yes.
sort of immediately make her presence known. It's like, oh hey, I am going to be capital I important later.
yeah, and basically at the beginning of every chapter, we get Vanille in voiceover talking about how she felt during a certain time, which is unusual because usually the tone of those narrations is quite somber, but Vanille herself in game has a
She
personality.
seems, yeah.
Yeah, she's aggressively sunny and positive,
Mm-hmm.
which is you eventually learn, and it is hinted that it's sort of a front. But
Yeah,
I
I
think
wonder.
yeah, right. But I think that like the attack on the train and what's going on the sort of corridors or highways that Snow is fighting on, I think that's supposed to be day 19 or 20, because throughout the first several chapters of the game, there will be flashbacks to the events of what was going on after the Pulse Falsi arrives on Cocoon. So it'll be
Mm-hmm.
like, but like day 10, you Snow proposes to his fiance Sarah, or
I want to say it's day 13 because
oh,
like
okay, sure.
the big build up is like, yeah, and Square's big on doing
Oh
that.
yeah,
Like,
oh, and there's 13s everywhere. Yeah, okay, of course,
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Vanille's all like, the 13 days after we awoke and all that jazz. But yeah, Lightning and Saz bust off the train, fight a giant robot scorpion, and take off. Snow and his crew are fighting against Psycom, and they're all kind of working towards the same goal. Is in that they are looking for Lightning's sister slash Snow's fiance, Sarah, who came into contact with the Pulse Falsi and is currently still inside the Falsi ship. So that is our goal at the beginning.
And so that's where they're headed. But on the way there, Snow this is happens remarkably early. Hope's mom dies in front of him. Her name is coincidentally also Nora, but she picks up a gun and fights alongside Snow and his friends, and sadly is shot and then takes a very, very long fall to her death right in the game's first 30 minutes.
Can I just say though? Can I just say?
Go ahead.
Um, she gets shot and then takes a long fall. However, Snow also takes that long fall, and he's just fine. I'd just like to
On
point out.
armor.
I'd just like to point out that whether or not you have anime physics superpowers entirely depends on whether or not you're a main character in
Yeah,
this
and
universe.
several chapters later, he falls off a skyscraper while protecting Hope and lands flat on his back and
he
survives that.
Mhm.
So
he Jackie Chans his way through a bunch of building facades and then atomizes every vertebrae in his spine. But no, he's fine.
Yeah, no, it's like the scene in Dark Knight Rises where the doctor is talking to Bruce Wayne and going, "Mr. Wayne, you have no cartilage in your body."
Yeah.
Snow should be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, but no, it's like it's like in an anime. Oh no, he'll just be on have bandages on for one episode and then he's
Look,
fine.
look, Snow drinks his milk every day, and his bones are indestructible.
Yes, and there's a reason he has the highest HP in the party in combat. But anyway, so Hope's mom dies in front of his eyes, fighting alongside Snow, but Snow is able to very quickly move on because he has his fiance to save, and I think a lot of other people in Snow's group die from the Psycom forces not long after Hope's mother dies. So Snow races off to the Falsey ship, while separately Lightning and Saz are going to the Falsey ship, and Hope decides he needs to confront Snow and demand satisfaction for the death of his mother. So he steals one of the Psycom bikes. Vanille goads him into riding on with him, and Vanille and Hope chase after Snow. And the end result is, after quite a bit of fighting, Snow, Hope, Vanille, Lightning, and Saz all meet Sarah. She looks at all of them crying. She's happy to see her sister and her fiance. And then she says something like, you have to save Cocoon, and then immediately turns into crystal. So the Pulse
Focus
Fal'Cie,
fulfilled.
yeah, the Pulse Fal'Cie that branded her and made Sarah a Lissy decided that her job was done at that moment, and out of rage, Lightning and Snow immediately fight the Pulse Fal'Cie, which is called Anima, so maybe related to the FF10 Eidolon.
Maybe somehow, but
Yeah,
I just think
right.
it's great that they're immediately just like, okay, time to go kill a god. We are in chapter 2.
I don't know if they kill the god, but they definitely at least annoy the god, and their end result is that everyone in your group there, all 5 of them, are made into Lassies themselves. So they have a shared vision of a monster doing something on Cocoon, but it's a little bit unclear what's going on. And so there's a big explosion of crystal light, and they land in an area that I think was a lake, but it is now entirely covered in ice or crystal because of the Falsey explosion, and all of them see their brands, and they all have various degrees of meltdowns. Again, Vanille's keeping a very brave face. Snow seems only concerned for the well-being of the now crystallized version of Sarah. Saz is having an existential crisis because, having lived on Cocoon his whole life, he believes that that now he's cursed and doomed and is now the eternal enemy of the home he's known his entire life. It's it's a lot that they're
It's a
all dealing
lot.
with.
It's a lot, and I think it is a really interesting dilemma that they find themselves in. I actually think the concept of Lassie in general, getting these superpowers from these mechanical entities, being given a task by them and literally branded by it, is a really interesting setup for a story. And I think all the characters going through different um, grief-stricken reactions to this new reality is actually a very, very compelling hook.
Yeah, it's a
Mm-hmm.
twist on, say, what happens at the beginning of Final Fantasy V, where the heroes come together, they find a crystal, and they're tasked by the crystal to save the world. And this is like a weird, darker version of that, where
Mm-hmm.
the crystals are living entities that can be that are, could be motivated selflessly or selfishly, and as some Falsi are definitely straight up evil, we'll mention them later. But instead of being tasked with the quest to save the world, they have to do what the crystal tells them, or else they could be turned into a mindless monster. Because
Mm-hmm.
you fight a couple Seath early on the way to Anima. They're
Yeah,
basically zombies. You don't want to be a Seath.
they
Yeah.
make it immediately clear, like, oh yeah, these are the consequences. Like, if you guys screw this up, so it's no wonder that everyone is kind of acting out in various ways. And this is something that I remember being another a very point of contention against 13, back when it came out, is that yes, this game has a lot of melodrama. There is a lot of angst. There are characters who are feeling their feelings, and they are not afraid to let us know about it.
Let's talk about the 5 characters that we've been
Yeah,
introduced now so far. Lightning is somewhat aloof and gruff, but definitely cares about her sister and is very mission focused, you could say.
she is the cloud
Mhm.
slash squall of this game.
I don't think she suffers as much as Cloud and is not quite as openly like disdainful of her teammates the way Squall is. I don't
I don't know, man.
she's up there, and I think she warms to the rest of the team, but it takes time.
Yes.
She's a bit of an ice queen, which is ironic because Snow is the one that's able to summon an ice queen.
Yeah.
And Snow, bless his heart, Snow does not have 2 brain cells to rub together. His only personality traits are angry and I love my
No.
fiance. Um,
Snow is the ultimate wife guy, and you love to see it.
Yeah, I again he is a big doofus, but is also like he has a very simple black and white notion of I want to protect my fiance and I want to be a hero. So he is probably takes becoming a lessee in stride the most because when it flashes back to a couple days before the event, Sarah tells him that she came into contact with the fal'Cie and is now a lessee, and he's shocked and like collapses on the ground for a minute or two, but then immediately runs over to Sarah and says, I don't care if you're a lessee, we're gonna figure this out. I'm gonna help you complete your focus and we're gonna and everything will be all right. And
Honestly, get you a man as supportive and himbo he is, Snow.
yeah, and Lightning is an independent woman who don't need no man, and Snow is a slightly codependent man who is very good to his woman. So they are not the same character, Lightning and Snow, even though they both describe natural phenomenon.
It also has helped for in Snow's case, I think, that he's voiced by Troy Baker, who is just a phenomenal actor, and I think really manages to give his character a lot of humanity, even though, again, like we mentioned, Snow is kind of dumb. Like he's just he managed. I think it's the voice performance that really elevates him.
And Troy Baker is a great voice actor, and this is after Troy Baker like voiced Kanji in Persona 4, but before
Mhm.
he was one of the leading men that you would just see in absolutely everything.
Yeah,
And I'm a little bit amused that Vanille is voiced by Laura Bailey, and Troy Baker and Laura Bailey would be Batman and Catwoman in the Telltale Batman games. So I'm playing
hmm
this going like, oh sweet, I've got Batman and Catwoman on my team.
yeah, right.
But like, this is I think before Troy Baker was a real A-list voice actor, but is definitely doing great work here as Snow. But moving on a little bit, we have Saz, who is who is a black person with a very handsome afro and an adorable chocobo chick living in the afro, which is I don't know, like which is definitely a visual choice. But his attitude is that
Imagine
he
how
is
bad this man's hair smells.
yeah, and none of them change clothes throughout any of this, and I don't know if any of them are taking showers in this game. Like they all probably smell bad by the time they bust out of prison in chapter 9. But but Saz, he feels like the most normal ass man in this whole crew because the whole time because he's like, man, I'm too old for this. I'm kind of tired. I just want to know if my son is okay. Like, why you people are all insane? Why are we making these decisions like to become terrorists? Like he is questioning the mission more than basically anyone else, but it's still but it's still like when he's traveling with Vanille for a large part of the game,
Hmm.
he's supportive. He's trying to be a good teammate, even though he has a lot of doubts clearly.
Mhm.
And then
He wants to be the responsible adult,
yeah, he wants to
basically.
be a responsible adult and try to do the right thing. I sincerely believe that, even though he doesn't always make the best decisions. We'll talk about that soon. And speaking of Vanille, she has a very bubbly, very positive personality. We know from the narration and how she reacts to certain words and situations that she knows more than she's letting on. But she's mostly along for the ride, and I think she does care about the team probably more openly than anyone else here. And then you have Hope. He harbors a deep vendetta against Snow for what happened to Hope's mother, and he's the youngest member of the group. I think he's 14 or 15. When
Yeah,
Lightning, Snow, and Vanille are all in the 18 to 21 range.
he is an actual child.
He's an actual child. He has a lot of grief and angst and unfair circumstances thrust upon him, but he also whines a lot and doesn't listen to the adults until he develops some kind of savior like feelings towards Lightning. So
He's
I was
typical teen.
yeah, but I also am on the record as really not liking young children characters in casts of adults. So Hope was definitely my least favorite teammate personality wise, at least for the first 7 chapters.
Can I quote you? Can I quote you for a second?
Sure, you may quote my social
Yeah.
media. I think I know what you're gonna say. Yeah.
Sollosi at me on Twitter. I wish Hope had died instead of his hot mom.
I did say that, and at the time I was in chapter 4 or 5, and I meant what I said. Yeah.
And I'm over here like, be nice to the baby. He gets better. I actually do. Well, I think Hope is probably, yes, he definitely starts off as probably the most obnoxious character in the party. I think he does have a very legitimate arc. I like the fact that he kind of grows up. And also I think that, again, I sort of cut him some slack because he is like a child who saw his mother killed in front of him and is sort of acting out because of it. And I think that is fairly realistic character writing, even if it is still kind of hard just waiting for him to get over it.
Right. Well, okay. Well, realistic character writing in a world that has Lassie and Falsey and Seath and Eidolons and all,
Hey, they
all
do
that.
their
I mean,
best.
and I understand it. I'm being a little, I'm being a little facetious here. And it is true that he is supposed to be an angsty teen dealing with a lot of feelings at once. And his behavior is consistent with that. That doesn't mean I like him for it. I mean,
No,
I already don't like teens and child characters, and and this one is an unusually accurately angsty teenager. It's like, no thanks.
I forgot about this. Is referring a YouTube review from like 10 years ago, but I forgot the zero punctuation was right all along. I forgot that Hope actually does pull a boomerang out of his pants.
That's right. Yeah.
Like his weapon is a boomerang, and whenever a fight ends, he just shoves that thing into an invisible pocket where his butt is. And I'm just like, where are you keeping that?
Yeah, like they probably put millions of dollars into Lightning's hair falling over her with one weird side pony of it falling perfectly over her left shoulder at all time, and the scabbard of her sword dangling realistically beneath her waist, and also a half ribbon cape flowing perfectly behind her. But they couldn't like give Hope pants with pockets. Like, really? It's like, come on.
Or give him a little strap for his boomerang or something. Like Saz has gun holsters.
Yes, Saz has normal holsters for his reasonably sized pistols, and you can see Fang's spear on her back in a reasonable way. And amusingly, Snow's weapon is his jacket.
Neil's deadly yo-yos actually have a... they can't fold, and she puts them behind her.
I don't know what Vanille's weapon is. It looks like she broke a candelabra in half, and then like spider silk comes out of it's yo-yo. It's like yo-yos coming off of a Hanukkah menorah.
Look, we're gonna get into how Fang and Vanille have big and they were roommates energy.
Yeah, and
we should also talk about how Vanille's starting weapon is called a binding rod.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be
Power
like a
top confirmed.
I think it's supposed to be kind of like some of Garnet's weapons in FF IX, like a rod that has unusual properties for her physical attack. So like it's almost like a fishing rod, but it's an oddly shaped tree branch or
she whips it around or something.
Yeah, and one time she like casts it at a medium-sized dragon and is able to hold it in place for a minute, which seems unrealistic because her arms are about as wide as bamboo poles, and when she runs, she swings them back and forth like she's a baby giraffe learning how to walk. This is the over animation in this game drives me batty sometimes. It's like I forget what his name was. I think it was Godot actually. One of Snow's goons at the beginning of the game. His his battle stance is so low to the ground that like his ass is underneath his knees, and they just have such exaggerated movements and poses in battle that sometimes it's like they're going for a certain 2010 Square Enix stylishness that I sometimes like, but sometimes I roll my eyes. But because these are over the top animations and designs.
They
I
really
think it
are.
works for Vanille though because of the undercurrents of her personality, where
Mhm.
she's kind of faking a lot of the exuberance and
Oh yes,
everything.
especially in chapter 6 when like the bubbly J-pop is playing for the Sunlift Waterscape, and she's running around with her arms by her side, kind of like skipping, and it's just like this is so happy. This
Yeah, and
is
then
so
it's like,
colorful and
ooh,
happy.
would you?
Yeah, and I want to talk about the dungeon design soon, but just to cap off this character discussion, I can definitely understand having a least favorite here. Like I found first half Hope the most annoying, but Vanille's bubbly mannerisms are pretty annoying. Lightning is cold, bordering on openly hostile. Snow is a giant dumbass that is definitely annoying. Anybody could have a least favorite member of the cast, and I would totally get it. Like and I mean, Square Enix is not great at portraying non-whites in the best of times, and Saz, while I don't think the tone of his character is bad, it's still a choice having a character with an afro, and I think him and his son might be the
The
Yes,
only
only black people on
yeah
Cocoon.
the only black people on Cocoon, or
Thane is ambiguously tan.
yeah, and I did a little bit of research about this. Fang and Vanille are both from the same place. We can say it now. They're from Pulse, and they have Australian accents. But in the Japanese version, they have thick Okinawan dialects, and Okinawa is a Pacific island is its own prefecture within Japan. Yeah,
Interesting.
they conquered it like 125 years ago or something. And
Themes.
but Okinawan people are considered dark skinned for Japanese because they're like they're like in between what you would consider a traditional Japanese person and a Pacific Islander. So they're like having Fang be tanned with an Okinawan dialect makes sense for a Japanese game to a degree. But yeah, they translated Okinawan dialect to Australian accent, which is kind of like how 20,000 games and RPGs translate Kansai dialect to a Brooklyn accent, and I think I like this new version better.
But when you think about it, it's the land down under.
Oh, oh man, oh wow, oh we men at work
Wow.
now. We are men at work now.
That is inspired. Good job.
Yeah,
Thank
brilliant.
you.
Um, so Final Fantasy Dundee or 13 continues. Basically, Saz isn't sure he trusts Lightning anymore when he because Lightning decides that the right move is to fight the Sanctum directly. The Sanctum is the governing body of Pulse. But Hope thinks that Lightning is the most capable person here, and he still wants to get after Snow. So Hope follows Lightning one way, Saz goes another way, and Vanille tags along with him. I think maybe out of concern, but although it's unclear what Vanille's motivations are at this point, while Snow stays behind with the crystalline body of Sarah, trying to dig her out of the crystal bed that she's in, and he's picked up by the military shortly after. So this
Which is
is
also where he bumps into our sixth party member,
Oh
Fang.
yeah.
Fang is the best character in this game.
oh I
Full stop. Fang is awesome.
I am on the record in multiple podcasts that I love a badass warrior woman type, and Fang absolutely is that, and Lightning is like 80% of the way to that. So where I am in the game now, I don't think either of them is ever leaving my party. I have my main
Oh
commando
yeah.
and my main Ravager right there, and the third party member is going to be, do I want haste or shell or debuffs or snow is going to be that final decision. But and now let's go into the structure a little bit of this game, because here's where I have a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, this and everything that we've discussed so far, which is generously the first 6 chapters, they are all single path dungeons with map layouts no more complicated than Quest 64. Just one path with occasional alcoves for a treasure chest. And there is very little or no like in NPC interaction. Like there is never a point where you can stop, and there's no point where you visit a village or talk to people.
All
Yeah.
NPC dialogue is just playing in the background. You actually have to turn on subtitles for it, and it's not something you can ever like just go up to press X to talk to this person. It's always they're basically just part of the background environment.
There are a
Yeah.
couple places where you press X to talk to someone, but it's to like initiate dialogue for moving the story along. But you don't get that until like chapter 9, and when it happened, I was a little shocked because there hadn't been any of it for the first 15 to 20 hours of the game.
And a lot of this, so 13's linearity is really the biggest strike against it, and I can totally see this is a criticism of the game that I think holds water and was has been widely commented on. A few years ago when we were doing a big Final Fantasy blowout feature for the site.
That was the end of 2017, and we recorded like 5 podcasts and like 20 written features. It was out of control.
It was intense, yeah. So my contribution to that was I did a bit of a deep dive into 13's development using some I found the game's post-mortem, which is very public. It's a very public document. You can find that and read that if you are interested. And then I was able to find some scans of old Electronic Gaming Monthly issues that had some very interesting early interviews and speculation about the game, because this was a time when Square was being very tight-lipped about this game. And it turned out the reason they were being tight-lipped about this game is because they literally had nothing to show. This game was developed on Square's in-house Crystal Tools engine, which is notoriously hard to develop for. It was designed pretty much to create very, very pretty environments, but they had a really hard time making an actual game out of it. This is the engine that 14 1.0 would later be developed on, that all of the 13 sequels were made for.
And basically, for the most part, since then, the Square has mostly been working in Unreal Engine or just better designed tools. The development of
They
this
have
game,
another in-house engine for 15 and for Forspoken, but that's also been a development nightmare.
right?
Like,
But yeah, this game has beautiful environments. Like that Crystal Lake area,
Mhm.
that's chapter 3, is
it's gorgeous.
gorgeous. And
Mhm.
chapter
Yeah.
5, I think you mentioned it a little bit, is this really beautiful, serene sort of jungle area that gives way to a sort of a hills and rivers area.
Oh yeah.
That's just beautiful.
In
And
general, I love this game's aesthetic design.
but
Like,
but chapter 8, when Saz and Vanille are in a big city that is a little bit like a party city, there's an amusement park and a casino or something in it, but there aren't NPCs to talk to
there's
there.
nothing to
It's
do.
it's a huge city area that should have activities and side quests, but it's empty corridors, which is weird for a Final Fantasy game.
And even some of these areas, like the Gapper Whitewood, is described if you read the game's data log, which is where a lot of the background information on this story is, sadly. You do have to do a lot of reading. Um, but that area is described as being a maze of corridors that is made purposefully difficult to navigate so as to confuse intruders. And I'm just over here like, oh, is that why it's a single clearly lit path?
Yeah, it's a weird cyberpunk forest with like silver trees in it, where the military breeds bioweapons and does experiments. But also you're like, it's a linear path, and you're sort of going along the same. It's like, oh, it's hexagonal treetop to hexagonal treetop, which are basically just platforms connected by bridges of light. It's like you can tell either corners were cut or some hard decisions were made to make this game oppressively linear. You can't also go back to previous chapters. All of the shop interaction is done through is done through save points.
Save
Yeah,
point.
and
A lot of
the,
that, and a lot of that is really because, like, 13 people say, like, okay, it's because 13 is a bunch of art assets that were slapped together at the last minute. Well, it's like, it's kind of what it was. By the developers' own admission, they did not have a clear idea what this game was going to be until the higher ups at Square basically told them, you're gonna ship a demo with Advent Children complete, the director's cut of the Final Fantasy VII movie. And that demo came out about roughly, I want to say 9 months before the game's final release. So when people are like, oh, okay, 13 had a development cycle of like 4 or 5 years. No, it had a development cycle of 9 months.
Yeah, it's weird. And while I'm talking about things that I didn't appreciate about FF13, these middle chapters, you're a team of two for so much of it. And
Yes.
that really cripples you because this let's talk about the combat system a little bit. This game technically has a job system that you don't get until you defeat that anima boss, the fal'Cie crystal thing. But there are 6 jobs total. Every character can equip 3 of them, and basically the jobs are Commando, which is a physical attacker, Ravager, which is a magical attacker, Sentinel, which can't attack but has a lot of defensive skills, Medic, which is your healer, Saboteur, which is like enemy debuffs, and Synergist, which is party buffs. And every character has 3 of those jobs, but you can rapidly switch them in battle for the best combination for a given situation. You can save loadouts of different job combinations called paradigms to make that as easy as possible. But you only control one character at once, and you can control what they do perfectly easily. Like you can target everything you can possibly target, but the other 2 characters in your group, up to 3, basic they will always be AI, but the AI is pretty good. Like they'll attack like
Mm-hmm.
certain paradigms will always
Yeah.
attack the same target as you. Some will always will attack random targets. But there's a hierarchy of the debuffers and buffers or synergists and saboteurs of like what skills are best to use first. If you have an enemy scanned and know what their weakness is, your attackers and buffers will always go for the enemy weakness. So like there's good, the AI is good, and because
Mm-hmm.
it's the turn-based ATB is so fast that I probably would go cross-eyed or get a seizure if I really had to control all 3 people and the combat stayed this fast. But the problem is when you have a party of 2 and not 3, you are so crippled because the 3-person synergy
Yeah.
is so much better than 2 people with only 2 jobs active at once. And because the game really rewards staggering enemies, basically like dealing enough elemental damage to them that they reach a vulnerable state, like getting the stagger fast and then pounding on them, but then switching to medic if you need to heal, or switching to sentinel if a big attack is coming and the sentinel needs to take the hit, or setting up your buffs and debuffs before you get a chain combo going. Like all of that feels great when it's going
Mm-hmm.
well, but it's hard for the combat system to really shine in a party of 2, and you're a party of 2 for like 5 straight chapters, maybe
Yeah, it's
it's I hated it,
Yeah.
there was a sense of relief when in chapter 9, where a lot of chapter 9 is Saz and Vanille are captured and the other 4 party members, because Fang's joined by now, are chasing after them. As I was just glad to play this game as a trio again, because I was so frustrated whenever they gave me a party of 2, and that happens a lot. And also you don't get to choose the makeup of your party until I think until the end of chapter 9 for the final boss. This game has 13 chapters, unsurprisingly, but you don't get to choose your actual party until the last leg of chapter 9, and so that freedom being taken away from me. And I don't mind the AI elements of the combat system, because I mean, whatever. I've played a terrifying amount of Dragon Age, and I've played Dragon Quest IV like 5 times. I'm used to AI teammates. Sometimes I will choose AI teammates on my own volition for random battles if I know the AI is trustworthy. I do that for a lot of games, in fact. And I press the auto battle button a lot in this game for the character I do control.
that's kind
So
of the main way to do it because it's almost always going to fill with the correct attacks.
yeah, unless unless you're like a synergist and you really want to get like your, I don't know, your elemental defense buff ahead of your haste buff. Although why would you? Because haste is like the best spell that Saz has.
Mm-hmm.
You can do things out of order for your main character, but most of the time auto battle will be the right decision, or at least a good decision. I don't think it's very good for sentinels, because like a sentinel will just use provoke 4 times a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
but
it's like
but
you already have the aggro. Come on.
yeah, like I understand people not liking to be able to control all three characters. I am mostly okay with that. I just don't like it that they take away so much party design freedom from the first 9 chapters, when party designing and character customizing is like one of my favorite things to do in a JRPG.
It definitely, unfortunately, takes too long for that combat system to really open up and show its full potential. I do think it is an excellent combat system. I think that it's fast paced. I like the strategy of building up the enemy stagger gauge, figuring out what is the best path going forward, hitting the weaknesses, switching quickly, having those different party setups. It feels very satisfying. And it's actually interesting because I'm doing a hard mode run of Final Fantasy VII Remake on the side while I'm playing this, and those games' combat systems are more similar than I feel like people want to admit. Um, the 13 really does feel like this is where a lot of the ideas for future Final Fantasy games start, and I find that interesting.
No, I agree. There is FF13 DNA in FF7 remake. I think that's undeniably true.
It's the same lead writer. Motomo Toriyama is also heavily involved in Seven Remake.
But also 7 remake, to its credit, you can replay a chapter easily after by
You can.
choosing from a menu, and there are town segments where you're in a city or a town or something, and there are side quests and activities to do in town, and you can talk to people in town, and the diegetic dialogue, like the people talking around you, is more present and more meaningful in FF7 remake, where they just don't have nearly enough of it in FF13.
And I talked about this a little bit on Twitter myself, but my favorite Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X is also extremely linear. It is pretty much a guided path through Spira for the first chunk of the game, but there are always people to talk to. There are always little side activities to do, and you can eventually go back to old areas. There's a ton of optional content in 10. 13, we'll get into probably in a future episode, but like all of 13's side content is sequestered to one area in Endgame. Like, it is a big area. There is side content to do in 13. And if you're looking to like max out your Crystarium and grind out your ultimate weapons and take on a couple super bosses, there is a lot of meat there to dig into, but it happens very late in the game. And unfortunately, that has the side effect of making the Cocoon environments feel really sterile.
That's also something I noticed when I was looking around for questions about. I was doing some research on this game to general things like what item do I need to upgrade, the Blaze Fire Saber, like stuff like that. There's an enormous amount of guides on how to do end game farming and end game material hunting, because I think people wanted more out of this game, and because it's so backloaded with late game side quests and late game optional bosses, that it's like people that are into FF13 go for the 100% trophies on it, and there's a lot of that, but it's also backloaded and a little bit empty calories, and because I mean people are advocating for killing hundreds of adamantoises for a 1% drop, which is a rare material for upgrading weapons, called I think it's a
I think it's Trapezodron, but I'm not 100% sure.
I think it's a trapezahedron. Yeah, I think you were right, but so that's one weakness of it. But
Did you sorry, Audra, did you want to get in there for a second? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying, with the sterile comment, it just felt like Cocoon was empty in a lot of respects. Beyond the enemies, there's really nothing.
You're right. There isn't really much to interact with. They try to work in a couple weird one-off gimmicks. Like, there's this one part of where you pilot a mech as Hope. It lasts about 2 minutes and then never happens again. There's this weird weather changing mechanic in Chapter 6. I don't know why it's there. You can do it. It doesn't really
yeah, you're turning rain on and off in one dungeon, so to have like the strong monsters go here and the weak monsters go here, and we're only a party of 2 that can't fight strong monsters.
Yeah.
It's a sensible dungeon gimmick, but it's used for like 15 minutes and then you never see it again, and the dungeon is still basically a corridor. But so like this game lacks RPG pacing and structure, because maybe I said this before. I feel like I'm playing Devil May Cry 3, except the combat is Final Fantasy IX combat, which is would be okay, except Devil May Cry 3 also lets me replay old stages and re-explore things if I want to. And Devil May Cry 3 gives me more character design freedom than FF 13, which is, but like, for it to be like mission structure but a mainline Final Fantasy game, and to have so oppressively linear stages, even more linear than FF10, is I have to consider it a knock. It's just, while FF13 is beautiful and the combat hits that platonic ideal of feeling fast paced while mostly being menu decisions and turn based, like, for everything it does well, it has some frustrating parts to it. But let's go to the rest of the story where we're at. When Lightning and Hope are traveling together, they Lightning gives Hope her a survival dagger that was a gift from Sarah to sort of,
And my anxiety just spikes through the roof.
yeah.
Like, no, 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 no! Do not give the baby a knife.
And he definitely wants to kill Snow with it, or at least stab Snow with it, because again, Hope.
Realistic character writing. He wants to violently murder Snow with a knife.
But as they travel together, like, Hope, you can tell Hope really looks up to Lightning and wants to be a cool, tough adult like she is. And Saz and Vanille traveling together. Saz tells Vanille about his son, a very adorable little boy named Daj, who was also turned into a Lassie, but by a cocoon fal'Cie and not a pulse fal'Cie.
Which means he's basically under like constant government watch.
Yeah.
All the time, and boy, are there some connotations there.
Yeah, and in chapter 8, Vanille basically reveals that she and her best friend, Fang.
Oh my god,
yeah,
they were roommates.
Yeah, they were they are from Pulse. They were involved in the Pulse Cocoon Wars hundreds of years ago, but after they completed their focus, they were turned into Crystal. But then 13 days before the events of the game, they were released from their crystal forms, and given a new focus, which is, again, the vision that you shared with Anima before, but they aren't totally sure what they need to do. And so indirectly, Vanille was trying to get, at the beginning of the game, she was definitely trying to get back to the fal'Cie there. I don't think she intended necessarily to bring Snow, Lightning, and Hope all there, and Saz there, but
no, I think she's just either looking for Fang or just trying to like figure out what the heck am I supposed to do now.
Yeah, I think she was looking for Fang, and was open to gathering allies. Like she wasn't specifically seeking out these other 4 people, but she's like, I need to find people I can travel with, and I need to find Fang, and that's, it just sort of happened that way.
But she feels incredibly guilty about it.
Yeah, but in chapter 7, and oh, there's a heartbreaking scene in chapter 8, maybe one of my favorite scenes of the game. Daj confronts Saz and says, "Daddy, I found you," and turns to Crystal right before his eyes. And then a dominatrix librarian named what's her name?
Jill.
Named Jill Vanat, I think.
Talk about wasting an awesome character's design on such a nothing.
Yeah. Oh my god. She looks like Cocoon Bayonetta, but it is just but it is just so useless. Like she basically just taunts Saz. Vanille tearfully runs away when Saz realizes that Vanille accidentally coming into contact with Daj is what turned Daj into a Lassie, because one of the Cocoon fal'Cie, as a defense mechanism, just turned the nearest human into a Lassie.
Now.
Yeah, exactly. But it turns out Daj's Lassie powers weren't, magic and fighting ability like your friends. It was the ability to detect other Lassie. And so Jill and the SciComm agents were using Daj to monitor your party, and decided that, we have them where we want them now. So let's have Daj turn into Crystal in front of Saz, just so Saz can torture himself psychologically. Saz almost shoots Vanille, but ultimately and before had even talked about just turning himself in because he didn't want to live his life as a Pulse Lassie. But it works out in the end. They defeat a monster together, and then are captured. And chapter 9 is the other 4 characters.
Do we want to get into how chapter 8 ends? Because like That might be one of the darkest, like,
Yeah,
single scenes I've ever seen in a Final Fantasy game. Yeah, Saz put possible trigger warnings for anybody listening to this.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah, yeah,
skip
yeah,
the
yeah,
next minute or so if
yeah.
you're like,
Trigger warnings for self harm or worse.
yeah. So
For about a minute. Go ahead, Peter.
yeah, so Saz, in a moment of despair when he can't bring himself to shoot Vanille, points a gun to his own head, and you only see it reflected in the shadows, and then the camera cuts when you hear of the trigger being pulled. Um, you find out in chapter 9, of course, that Saz did not shoot himself. He is in the party for the rest of the game, but still, talk about a bleak place to end that chapter, because I was legitimately sitting there like, oh my god, they did not go there.
Yeah, and backtracking a little bit in chapter 7, like Hope and Lightning finally reconnect with Snow. And Snow makes a dramatic entrance on his motorcycle. Oh yeah, we forgot.
Let's talk about summons
Yeah,
for a second.
summons in this game are completely bonkers.
I love them.
Shiva is now two ladies that turn into a motorcycle that Snow rides. Odin turns into a noble robot steed that Lightning rides, and Saz's summon is a uh,
Brunhilde.
yeah,
Uh,
is like a fire Valkyrie Brunhilde that turns into an F1 car.
yeah, it's dope as heck. And basically in this game, Eidolons are basically entities that show up to help Lassie complete their focus. But in order to do that, they have to test the Lassie's prowess first. So every time you encounter a summon, it's at a moment where a character is having an emotional crisis that they need to overcome. The boss, then you fight them as a boss. Um, and they're fun bosses. They're kind of gimmick fights because you have to like figure out what causes this little gauge to build up, and then repeat doing that action. Like for one of them, it's healing the party members. For one of them, it's
Yeah,
blocking attacks.
yeah. For the Shiva fight, Snow has to block a bunch of attacks. For the Odin fight, Lightning has to um, heal Hope a lot, while Hope builds an elemental chain combo.
It's a weird attempt at storytelling through game mechanics that I'm not 100% sure was it's not particularly deep or anything, but I sort of appreciate the effort.
I think they look
It's
cool.
kind of like a little puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're basically combat puzzles, and but mostly the summons just look really really cool. I wish there was more of them. And again, I'm at the beginning of chapter 10, and
Everyone has one.
yeah, I figured everyone has one, but I've only encountered the three that we mentioned.
You
So
want me to tell you? You want me to tell you what the other ones are?
I know one of them is Bahamut. But I don't know the other two.
Okay.
But I can discover it on my own. It's cool.
You'll get there soon. But yeah, I think the summons are seriously cool in this game. I like seeing the mechanical versions of like Final Fantasy mainstays, and I really like the transforming gimmick is ridiculous, but in the best possible way.
Yeah, no, it's over the top anime nonsense, but I mean I'm a Tales of and Disgaea fan. I love over the top anime nonsense.
Hmm.
So, yeah, the summons are great. Using them in battle is a little bit awkward because they have like 7 moves that you have to enter the attacks in manually, a Smash Brothers main character. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
it's like up and cross does this, but down and cross does this.
yeah, and then it's basically just make sure you have enough at the end to do their big finisher attack.
Right.
Is really the trick to it.
I did them. I used them like once each, and then stopped the rest of the game because I just mostly prefer doing fast paradigm shifts in the middle of battle and
Yeah,
like switching from.
Yeah, that's kind of me
Yeah.
generally
too.
speaking, that's usually the best approach. It's just I think there are certain fights in Endgame where they want you to use specific summons to help you out, but yeah, for the most part, it's more like a flourish than really a necessary part of combat.
But anyway, back to the game a little bit. The chapter 9 is mostly a dramatic rescue.
I'm sorry to get ahead of you, but could we talk about chapter 7 first? That's
Oh,
really
okay, yeah, sure. Let's do that. Yeah. So most of chapter 7 is Lightning and Hope being hunted by Psycom forces in Hope's hometown, Palamporum, which I think is probably a reference to the two characters from Final Fantasy IV.
yes, it
Um,
is.
and
Yeah.
and when you're while being confronted, Snow and Fang come in, and basically sometimes as two people, sometimes as three people, have to fight your way through the city, You fight some motorbikes that can Gatling gun you, which is a death sentence unless you switch to Sentinel in time. And they basically Hope confronts Snow, almost stabs him, ultimately doesn't. Snow breaks down, he's the only time in the game so far where he's not his confident self, when he realizes that Hope was the son of the woman that died right next to him. And eventually your whole party reconvenes at Hope's childhood home with his father present. And the way Hope had been talking about his dad the whole game made you think he was like a cold, distant man, but Hope's dad is a pretty good dad.
He's chill. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just worried about his son, and he offers you guys sanctuary despite knowing the danger to him, and he's
I think it was more
supportive.
typical Hope being a teen.
Yeah, Hope's just being angsty. I really like the scene with him and Snow, though. I like that Snow breaks the facade a little bit and kind of shows some vulnerability, and really does make an honest effort to, like, you know what, like, Hope and him reconcile, and it's a very sweet moment.
There are scenes of big drama in this game, and chapters 7 and 8 are both really hugely dramatic. There's another scene a little bit before the one with Hope and Snow where Lightning where I think Hope comments that the Fal'Cie that support the humans basically treat the humans like pets. And then Lightning basically just almost snaps and says, "It's all pointless. Like, what use is an ant fighting fighting the person that built the ant farm?" But and for a second, like it almost seems like Lightning's giving up. But
It is
then
this like overwhelming Herculean task they've been given.
she's just overwhelmed by a realization of what they're up against. And then Hope's like, "So you're just gonna give up?" And Lightning basically responds like, "No, I have to keep fighting, but I'm just understanding how impossible this is." And like, there are scenes of big drama, but sometimes they come out from left field so hard, or the pacing is so weird that I don't think they're always earned. Like sometimes, like a big dramatic scene would happen, and I'm just sort of taken aback, like, well, where did this come from? But like the plot seeds are there and the character motivations are there, but sometimes they just felt weird when a character would have a wild emotional swing.
Yeah. Chapter 7 also introduces us to a minor character named Yag Rosh, who is like a SciComm commander. And I legitimately forgot this dude existed until last week when I was playing this game. And I remembered, this is real, I swear to God it is. It was one of those old EGM magazines that I was sourcing for my 13 article, where because Yag Rosh has a silver haircut and a sword, someone thought that he was going to be the next Sephiroth, and that comparison is so funny to me.
Yeah, jeez.
Yeah, because Yag Rosh accomplishes nothing. He shows up. Again, it's a cool character design wasted on a nothing character. Because I will tell you straight up, he comes back once in Chapter 12 and also accomplishes nothing.
The lightning bird that you fight twice in Chapter 10 has more impact than Yag Rosh.
Yeah, it's just like, and that's just one of those things where it's like maybe this game needed more time in the oven, but yeah, Jill, if nothing else, Jill, the hot librarian lady, is in 13.2's DLC as a Coliseum fighter. Yag Rosh has been forgotten to time completely.
Yeah. Jill she's only like 3 scenes in the game, and she makes an impact, and then she immediately dies against what's his name, Balanthus?
Barthandelus.
Right.
Barthandelus.
My God,
It's an extra name.
What a villain ass name. Yeah, it's like there's no way Barthandelus is like unrelated to royalty or evil. It's like he's either a king or the biggest big bad you've ever heard.
Oh, yeah, he's Pope Francis.
Yeah, Barthandelus is the true identity of the ruler of Sanctum, which is again the ruling body of Cocoon, and he transforms into a giant monster with like a big toothy face and armor with cannons on it.
Yep, because turns out he's a Fal'Cie.
Yeah, he's not a human that's working for the Fal'Cie. He is an actual Fal'Cie, and who treats humans like pawns at best and dirt and worms at worst. He kills everyone in the room that he's in besides your party and absorbs them into him before attacking you, and including Jill, I think, unless she
Kind of nightmarish. Like,
Yes.
holy crap.
Yeah, unless she comes back as a surprise later. But it looked like he murdered the whole room.
Nope, she gone.
Yep.
Nope.
And
That's her
and
extent.
and his boss fight is a little tricky. I died once and had to retune my my paradigms to go back after him because he just deals a lot of damage and you really have to time your heals and defenses right against him. But if you know if you have good Ravagers and Commandos, you can knock him out of his big attack, so, which I did at least once.
Mhm.
But and he has a huge amount of HP. But yeah,
It's a tough fight, but you can almost hear the developers going, "This is where the real Final Fantasy XIII begins," because it's this point onwards where you really have to be paying attention to your party comp and making sure that you're prepared going into boss fights.
generally, I don't think this is a super easy RPG.
No, it's not.
There are tricky boss fights and not skippable ones that you have to figure out or and have some reflexes for even because like timing when you paradigm switch for the right comp is really important. And I've died a couple times in random battles because they got it got out of hand a little bit and you know I took a giant explosion from a bomb or something
Mhm.
but the game's also very forgiving because there's a retry function that'll take you right back to before that battle happened
Mhm.
and gives you an opportunity to run away and avoid it or retune your party and go after it. And
Yeah.
the sprinkling of save points is pretty generous. Like every dungeon will have like 4 save points in it.
Yeah, really the only time that I ran into an issue was at the giant airship boss at the end of chapter 7, and that's only because it sends you back to the safe point, but there are two groups of mobs you have to defeat before you can progress to the boss fight. So unfortunately there's no way around that. Those mobs just respawn and you have to fight them again. But that's really the only time in this game I've ever encountered something like that. For the most part, if you die, you just go right back into it.
I think that the designers knew that this is a slightly intense version of an ATB battle system, so they made forgiving retries and save points just so like people wouldn't have their souls crushed by having to replay a quarter of a dungeon to get to the point that they missed. But
Yeah, totally.
so again, like this game makes some really cool well it executes on some really cool concepts like these summons and this job system and some of the parts of the characters and some really baffling decisions like the linearity and other parts of the characters and the total lack of city areas. And I know that part of it was due to time constraints or budget constraints, but I mean this is a big numbered Final Fantasy game, so expectations are high. And
Hmm.
while I'm enjoying myself, I'm mostly having a good time, especially when I get to level up everyone's skills after a couple thousand CP. Because there's
That
again,
is it is a very satisfying level up system.
oh yeah, yeah,
I love the Crystarium.
Oh yeah.
yeah. It's the Crystarium. It's not that much different from a more linear sphere grid, but it's very stylish. And when you do get a new skill, it feels important. So that's important. That's great to have a skill system where learning a new skill feels like an event. And again, there's nothing I love more in this life than leveling up or opening a treasure chest, and FF13 is pretty good at both of those. But so I'm enjoying myself, and I want to see how the story ends. But there are some caveats in this game, and we've gone over a lot of them. And I'm sure we'll have more thoughts when I get to the giant open area chapter, which is either chapter 11, 12, or both.
It's
Uh,
11.
okay, it's 11. Got it.
12 is Eden, and then
And
13 is the
13,
final dungeon.
yeah, 13 is grand finale. That makes sense. Okay, so I have not gotten any of those yet. I am like 2 or 3 save points into chapter 10. But I know I'm going to be playing this game all weekend, and I'm determined to finish it in time for the next recording. But Audra, you have not beaten this game like I have. What's one idea or one hope you have? Not actual hope, a lowercase h hope. Well, what's one expectation or idea you have for the second half of this game?
I'm just kind of looking forward to the open world. That was the part that I stopped at, was right when they got to that point. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how it differentiates from the rest of the game.
And one more question before we close down the shop. Peter, do you have a favorite party and or paradigm?
Um, I usually tend to have all of the girls in my party, so Lightning, Fang, and Vanille. Vanille has a Fang is a good Sentinel. Vanille has excellent debuffing, including later on in the game she gets access to the Death spell. which can actually does work on some big enemies, which is really handy. And Lightning in general, I like having the main character of most games in my party, and Lightning's an S tier design. I really like her.
And Audra, same question. Do you have a favorite party and or favorite job setup?
Right now, it's probably Fane and Lightning, and I'm guessing I'm probably going to either put Hope or Vanille in the party for the magic stats. Maybe Zaj because of the haste, but
Yeah.
I haven't quite gotten to that part yet where I've can switch the characters.
It's near the end of chapter 9 is when that happens. For me, I said this earlier. Lightning and Fang are by far my two favorite characters. Lightning switches between Commando and Ravager. Fang is most of the time a Commando, but when I need defense, she's a very very good Sentinel, and she's also a pretty good Saboteur because she can slow enemies. And that third spot, most of the time, I almost hate to admit this, most of the time it's Hope. Because
Hope is a useful party member.
yeah, Hope is maybe the best Ravager in the game. He learns all the good elemental spells, and he's the second best healer after Vanille, and the second best booster after Saz. If he eventually learns haste, I probably wouldn't need Saz ever because like haste being such an awesome buff is why I use Saz sometimes, and used him for part of chapter 10. But Vanille being a great healer and having good debuff spells that are different than Fang's make her really valuable also. Um, I don't hate Snow. He's the best Sentinel in the game, but other than defense and HP, I think all the other characters are better than he is.
Yeah, they do try to make sure that, like, at least if you want, like, for specific fights, there's probably an ideal party setup. But you can, for the main game, you can probably get by with just picking the characters you like.
Yeah, if it was just the characters I like, it would be Lightning, Fang, and Saz. But because I genuinely like buffing and debuffing in RPGs. Like it's kind of my play style a lot of the time. Like a good physical character that can curse enemies and boost themselves. That's kind of like my favorite kind of thing, kind of character. So, yeah, like Lightning and Hope, absolutely top of the list, and then the third party member just depends on what I'm feeling. But most of the time, it's probably Hope. Um, but we like my expectations going forward. I want to see how the story ends. I want to see what kind of side quests they throw at me. I also want to see the last three summons. I know that one of them is Bahamut, but other than that, I am not sure what the other two are. I have not. I've mostly avoided spoiling myself on Final Fantasy 13 over the years.
One of them is neat. The other one is weird. I'll leave it
Okay.
at that.
I don't mind weird, but I am looking forward to the end of this game, and it won't be a chore getting like knocking out the second half. I think, especially since I have a couple free days ahead of me, and I think I'll be able to do it just fine. But listeners, I don't know if you're a FF 13 newbie like me, or an FF 13 hater like my friends on Caves of Narsh, or an FF 13 enthusiast like the GameFAQs forum that I was checking to see how to upgrade the Blaze Fire Saber. But if you want to reach out to us, the best way to do so is to email retro@rpgfan.com about past, present, or future episodes. And thank you for listening. But thank you, Peter and Audra, for joining me on this journey. I don't know if I ever would have played this game if not for the podcast. So I have
That's
Retro
what Retro
Encounter.
Encounter's for.
Oh, I really like getting the chance to play it again. I'm looking forward to the ending now.
So this podcast, which has taken over a large portion of my life, is both to thank and to blame for my current gaming situation. But what's coming up next for Retro Encounter? We're doing another Final Fantasy 13 episode next week, to the surprise of nobody. But then in September, we're going to have an episode all about the 3DS, because the 3DS shop is in the process of shutting down permanently. The 3DS is being phased out by Nintendo, and it was a great system with a lot of great RPGs and other games on it. So we're going to have a 3DS appreciation station in a couple of weeks. And also, Peter, you and I, well, all three of us talked before the podcast about doing an episode on the Final Fantasy 13 project in general, because again, you wrote a feature on it 5 years ago or so, and that's just a fascinating story with a lot of games. That was a definitive chapter in the Square Enix story. So having an episode all about that, I feel, is definitely warranted around the same time we have these FF13 episodes.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about those and more. Some of the spin-offs and side media for 13 is really interesting, and it did eventually lead. I mean, we've talked at length about 15's whole weird development cycle. But that's an interesting story too. So look forward to hearing about that.
And also in coming next month, we're doing 2 episodes on Live Alive. We going from a 2010 Square Enix RPG to a 1994 Square RPG. That game had a recent remake on the Wii, and I think pretty much everyone's going to be playing that remake. But we will be talking about some Square Enix perspectives and some Super Famicom nonsense in September. It'll be a nice change of pace from FF XIII. But RPG Fan has more than just podcasts about Square Enix games. You can also comment on our message boards, visit our Facebook page, RPG Fan.com on Twitter. There's Discord, YouTube, Instagram, Twitch, something going on all of those sites. Every day of the week, we have a dedicated team of streamers and social media people that manage all of that for us. And more recently, we have an RPG Fan store. If you go to rpgfan.com and follow a link to the RPG Fan store, you can see a lot of RPG Fan merchandise on TeePublic, including shirts, coffee mugs, phone cases, pins, and all manner of other things, with plans for more to be added at a later date. I already have a shirt. I'm not wearing it right now, but it is in the rotation. And speaking of rotations, in your podcast rotation, there's more than just Retro Encounter. We have Random Encounter every 2 weeks about current events and randomness, and Rhythm Encounter every other 2 weeks about RPG music. Please enjoy both of those podcasts as well as Retro Encounter on the podcast listening platform of your choice, be it Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Podcrunch, whatever. If you are able to give feedback on that service, please give feedback. 5 out of 5 stars preferred. But if you want to give us 5-star ratings as individuals, not as a podcast, let's tell the listeners as a panel how to reach us, starting with you, Peter.
As always, if you're looking to find my inane thoughts on just about anything, you can look me up at I Have Fury on Twitter. You can email me, petert@rpgfan.com as well.
Now, Audra.
Audra B at rpgfan.com.
And listeners, you can find me most easily on Twitter. I'm at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs at other times, Monsoon Mike on the RPG Fan Discord, always willing to volunteer my opinions on the hottest Final Fantasy moms. So,
all right, so from the top, I'm just kidding.
All right, right at the top is definitely, you know what? We're not going to go there. That is a different podcast episode entirely.
It's not just this mom that we never meet.
I don't know. I was pretty interested in the 15 seconds that we see Garnet's mom in Final Fantasy IX. Listeners, okay, now we've really got to end the podcast. Listeners, thank you, good night, and good luck. Get me out of here.